Will I ever stop filming in this nook? Fucking nope.
MorgyyReads. Tequila, it was dumb.
Can I help you?
Hi, hey, I'm Morgan, and today I'm bringing you my December wrap-up, the last wrap-up of 2019. Ignore the fact that it's going up in 2020. That's a direct attack to my upstairs neighbors. Quit stomping the fuck around. So December was a pretty good reading month in terms of quantity, and I read some quality books as well. So I'm going to hop right into the stats because y'all know I fucking love stats, and then we'll talk about all of the books that I read. Consulting my little reading journal here, I read 14 books in the month of December, and that amounted to a total of 3,845 pages. What? 3 of these books were read physically, while the remaining 11 were audiobooks? Yeah, 11. I can't do fucking math. 9 of these books were rereads, while the remaining like 5 were like new to me books. Taking the 3,845 pages and dividing it by 31 days in November, I had an average pace of reading 124 pages a day. I don't think I've had a month where I've read more than 10 books in a month. So that's pretty cool. And my average rating was 3.4 out of 5 stars. And in typical MorgyyReads fashion, I'm going to do mini reviews of each of these books, starting with my lowest rated, working my way up to my highest rated. I didn't have any 5-star reads this month, but I had one that was pretty close. The first book I'm going to be talking about, the lowest rated book that I read in the month of December, was City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. I ended up giving this 2 out of 5 stars, and I listened to this on audiobook. I recently unhauled all of my Cassandra Clare books because I was like, I don't want to physically look at all those naked bodies anymore. And after reading this book, I've decided I'm not going to continue to read books by Cassandra Clare. Cassandra Clare? Fuck if I know. This is the second book in her Mortal Instruments series, and I feel like if I were to continue in this series, I would just be fucking hate reading, and I don't want to do that to myself because we're going into 2020 with full self-love and self-care at heart. Spoilers for the first Mortal Instruments book and like kind of the second one, okay? Cool. Skip to like this time slot if you don't want to be spoiled. I don't know. My biggest problem with this fucking book, with this fucking series, is that like, I'm not trying to root for people that think that they're siblings and wanna fuck. I'm not gonna do it. It's not for me, not my taste. Okay, so in the first Mortal Instruments book, like the big plot twist is that Clare and Jace, who've been like horny for each other the whole time, find out that they're both the children of the villain Valentine, which makes them siblings, and it's like, ew, gross, incest. So all throughout the second book, it's like, ew, gross, incest, but also like, I know you're my brother, but I still want to fuck you, and I'm still horny, and I'm still looking at you with desire in my eyes. An actual direct quote from the book, don't fucking at me. And I just wasn't about it. It made me super uncomfortable. I don't like incest as a plot point in general, but especially not in the context of like rooting for these characters and knowing that inevitably they do end up together, and at this point they think that they're siblings and still like wanna fuck. And there's like a hot and heavy makeout scene where like in their mind they still think they're siblings. It just wasn't my cup of tea, wasn't my cup of coffee, wasn't my glass of water, wasn't anything palpable to me. Palatable, that's what I meant to say. If you like the Mortal Instruments series, if you like Cassandra Clare, that is so dope, and I'm so stoked for you. It just wasn't for me, and I'm not trying to read any more sexual tension between potential siblings. Not doing it. The next book I'm going to be talking about, I rated 3.5 out of 5 stars, and that is Fangirl by Rowell. This is a reread. The last time I read this was like 5 or 6 years ago, I think, and I read it for the holiday magical readathon, which I stopped partaking in just because I felt a lot of conflict doing a Harry Potter readathon after finding out all the shitty stuff that J.K. Rowling said in the month of December, and I'm just like taking a little bit of a step away from affiliating myself with her. Yes, I know my entire left arm is dedicated to Harry Potter. Yep. So this follows our main character, Cather, and she is starting her freshman year at college, and she's a little upset and doesn't know how to find her way around college, but especially because her twin sister, Ren, wants essentially nothing to do with her for the first time ever, so she relies heavily on writing fan fiction for a popular series called Simon Snow to really get her through it. Carry On by Rainbow Rowell is super duper popular, and this is like loosely what that is based around. Carry On is the fan fiction that Kath writes in Fangirl, and it's just a really sweet YA contemporary. I really find this to be like a YA staple because everyone and their mom talked about Fangirl. It's definitely the least racist out of Rainbow Rowell's books. Eleanor and Park was super racist. Yeah. But I still had my issues with the pacing of this book, with some of the things that kind of like dates the story in what they say and what they do. So while there were some things that I found didn't age well with the progression of time with this book, I do think that what aged wonderfully is the social anxiety representation that you see in Kath. As someone with pretty severe anxiety, I think that anytime that I can read a book where I feel even remotely seen is just wonderful, and I love that about this book, and I think that it's just handled really delicately and really well. I've never really liked the Simon Snow like excerpts before each chapter, and that has like remained true with this reread. Levi's such a fucking babe. Like, that was my first like book boyfriend, and the first like book boy that I was like, oh hello, send that barista my way. I didn't kick high enough for it to be in frame, so that just looked really obnoxious. So the next 11 books I'm going to talk about at the same time. That is because they are all part of the same series. I decided to start rereading and to finish A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. And by finish, I mean I've never read past book 8. Listen, my family had so many fines at the library that the only time I could check out books is when I stayed with my grandpa, and I had other books that I prioritized over them, and I got the first 8 at Half Price Books and like binge read those and then never finished the rest of the series. Real talk, hi. There was like a challenge for the Winter Magical Readathon to read a book published in 2001, and the only book that I had in my collection that wasn't Harry Potter was like the 6th book in a series of unfortunate events. And I was like, why not reread the first 8 books and then experience the last 5 books for the first time with brand new eyes? I'm going to talk about the first 11 books in this series as a whole. I have rated each of these books 3.5 out of 5 stars, just so you know. Rating middle grade is pretty difficult for me because I am not the intended audience for middle grade stories. So like, while I can pick out things like repetition and like being explanatory as like an issue and to be nitpicky, I understand that these are so helpful for middle grade readers to widen their vernacular and their vocabulary. I owe so much of my having a strong vocabulary at a young age to these books, and I credit them full-heartedly. Let's talk about these books. Let's do it. Why am I holding this whole stack? I can literally just hold one. A Series of Unfortunate Events is a 13-book middle grade series by Lemony Snicket that follows the trials and tribulations of the Baudelaire orphans as they have to hop from home to survive being pursued by an evil man named Count Olaf, who is trying to get their family fortune after their parents have perished in a terrible fire. It's full of mystery and wittiness and clues, and it's so like, it's aged so wonderfully. Like, there's some little things that I found issue with, obviously, because I'm a more critical reader than I was at the age that I first read these. But I really do believe that they have aged wonderfully and that they still pack a wonderful punch, and they're so rife with foreshadowing and metaphors and like synchronicity, and they're awesome. They're so good. And yeah, so the books I read for this series this month were The Bad Beginning. The Reptile Room, The Wide Window. The Miserable Mill is book 4. Book 5, The Austere Academy, and book 6, The Ersatz Elevator. The Vile Village, which is one of my favorites. The Hostile Hospital. The Carnivorous Carnival is book 9. I started picking them up from the library because I only owned book 8, so I got the remaining ones from the library, so you'll see a little continuity error with the covers, which I'm not thrilled about, but whatever. The Slippery Slope and The Grim Grotto. So while I did pick up most of these books from the library and I do own the physical copies, I ended up listening to a bulk of these on audiobook. And by a bulk, I mean 10 of them. I only read The Bad Beginning physically, and then I found out, y'all, the audiobooks are narrated by Tim fucking Curry. Frankenfurter himself, Wadsworth the butler from Clue himself, stolen credit card from Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, Tim Curry, my motherfucking man, narrated the series of Unfortunate Events audiobooks, and they're so good. If you have a Scribd membership or you have a YouTube channel, you can like look up the audiobooks, listen to one. Like, people put audiobooks on YouTube all the time. It's so great. But I listened to all of these once I found out that Tim Curry narrated the audiobook. Lemony Snicket also narrated some of them, and I prefer Tim Curry's narration. He does a wide array of voice acting and stuff, which Tim Curry does in general, not just with this, but just in his career. He's gone from just like acting traditionally to voice acting, which is so cool. Listening to these books has been an absolute treat and a delight, and I'm so excited to continue this series going into 2020, and by continue I mean read the last 2 books. I'm super stoked that I decided to reread these books and then continue reading them. I now can finally like watch the entirety of the Netflix series because I'm one of those like have to read the book first type of bitches. It's me, I'm bitches. Reading these books has been a delight. I highly recommend the audiobooks if you've never listened to them, because like, we stand Tim Curry in this house. And the final book that I'm going to be talking about in December in 2019, etc., is going to be Aphrodite Made Me Do It. This is by Trisha Mateer. I obviously borrowed this from the library and I had to specially order it from somewhere else. There's just this big ugly sticker on it. It's fine. And I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adore this. Rhiannon from Crescent Reads talked about this super highly in one of their videos talking about short books to complete your Goodreads reading challenge, and it sounded super interesting, and I take Rhiannon's poetry recommendations super seriously because we have similar taste. And this book did not disappoint in the slightest. It's a dual perspective poetry and prose collection where some segments are written from the perspective of the author, Trista Mateer, and other sections of this book are written from the perspective of the Greek goddess Aphrodite. And this speaks so beautifully about trauma and mental illness and self-love and being a woman and being identified or perceived as a woman and queer identity and living in a toxic and homophobic environment. It has a trigger warning list before you even start the book, which I think is super important. And then it also is rife with like some modern art that Trista Mateer did herself, themselves. She. Okay, there's she, her pronouns on the back. I just want to make sure I wasn't fucking it up. Definitely one of my favorite poetry collections I read this year. I have a hard time connecting to modern poetry, so I docked it down a star just because certain poems didn't sit super strongly with me, but that doesn't mean they won't sit strongly with somebody else. But the prose in this book are stunning. The perspective of Aphrodite is so well done and so creative and poignant, and I really enjoyed this collection, and I highly recommend it, and I'll definitely be checking out other works by Trista Mateer in the future. So that was it. That was my December wrap up. There are books everywhere. If you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up if you feel so inclined. Definitely leave me comments talking about what you read in the month of December, what your favorite read was, what your least favorite was. Talk to me about anything and everything, because chatting with you guys is my absolute favorite thing. And if you want to see more of my content and more of my mug, you are more than welcome to subscribe. I upload every Monday and Friday. And yeah, like I said, my name is Morgan. This is MorgyyReads. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and happy reading. Okay, bye!